Namaste, good afternoon, rather good evening from here, from India. Sanjay Tambe, I don't know if you can listen to me, all of you. I don't see the videos of you guys, but I presume that you can hear me. Um, so yes, welcome to the forum. Indian Entrepreneurs Forum is a forum that started in 2019, relaunched in 2019, which helps entrepreneurs across India and Germany, or rather the DACH region and India, to enable them basically to understand the German market and to understand the tools which can be used for the entrepreneurship within Europe and taking advantage of whatever is offered from India. We have been kindly supported by FICCI, which is the Federation of Indian Chambers of Companies in India, which is a large organization, has a membership of, I don't know, I think more than 25,000 companies from India. And the international activity has been also strongly activated in Germany a couple of years back. And thanks to them, we can also organize such webinars across India and Germany as a platform. As well as we have LÜDERS partner from Munich and Stuttgart who have kindly given us the opportunity to invite Dr. Anton Reinfelder for today's forum, who wants to share his, I would say, very core and niche intrinsic knowledge on the subject of systemic consulting. Also in the background, we have Longhouse partners who's been kind enough to support us technically to enable this platform so that it happens technically and regularly. The series is called Inder Talk. Inder Talk is a slang which we are trying to use where we say not only Inder are in Gespräch, means in discussion, but we have kind of a forum where it's like a chat window where two people can discuss with each other or many people can gain from it by discussing a specific subject which is related to India and Germany, Indian business, as well as German businesses, and the current focus is on startups which are gaining more and more, I would say, popularity as well as traction in both the countries, as Germany and India are both big startup hubs. Today's subject is very intrinsic in a way that it applies to classical industries as well as big companies and conglomerates who have been there across the international borders. But let me first quickly introduce to you Dr. Anton Reinfelder. Let me invite him. Is he there already? Anton,
Yes,
can
he
you hear me?
is.
Yes,
I
hi.
can hear you, and I
Hi.
hope you can see me.
Namaste, Anton. Yes, we can see
Namaste.
you. And luckily, we also see a nice picture behind you, which is very nice. Maybe you can tell us what it is about. But I would like to say a few words about you. You have actually spent more time in India than I have done. So you are a kind of a senior manager. You are a management consultant by today's profession and leading a chapter which is systemic consulting at LÜDERS as well as Dr. Reinfelder Consulting. You have spent quite a number of years in India, leading a company as Vice President of Quality Methods and Assurance, which is Robert Bosch GmbH, as well as you are the Managing Director of Groth-Speckert Asia Private Limited in Chandigarh. And I presume you can share a few of your experiences from India also regards to systemic consulting, but I think that enables you to become a very appropriate host for us. So I thank you very much for taking this time out for the IEF forum as well as for our guests and being with us today and sharing your thoughts on this process of systemic consulting. Um, yes. So
Thank you.
I would actually put all those questions to you which I already have in mind, but let's give you an opportunity first to tell us about systemic consulting a little bit what it is, and I would request all the viewers to either put your questions in the chat window and we can take this up as we move forward or at the end of this session. So thank you, Anton, again for joining us, taking this time out. Welcome to IEX forum today.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, and thank you for the kind introduction. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about this very interesting subject. to the introduction, I would only like to add, I call myself a hybrid because, because I have Indo-German roots. I was born in India. My mother was Indian and my father was German. So I truly have the best of both the worlds. And I think you would notice that later on. I just want to mention it now because you'll notice it certainly later on.
Yes.
So you asked the first question, what is systemic consulting all about? And if I'd like to set the frame for what I'm going to say now, because this is what I'm going to say is exclusively in a business or organizational context. Now, we at LÜDERS Partner, we consult organizations that can be found in industry, automotive or non-automotive. And as you rightly said, it could be the large organizations like big automotive suppliers. It could also be the medium-sized ones. And LÜDERS Partner also consults customers in the field of healthcare, like hospitals, with or without research and education branches. Now, systemic consulting is based on the application of the systemic approach to social systems. That's where it actually originates from. Organizations are basically complex social systems. And what happens is, as long as these systems work fine, it's okay. But what happens is that from time to time, internal or external disturbances take place. And what they do is they generate deficits or deviations within the organization or system. So that's synonymous. It is also possible that a disturbance could happen unexpectedly and could be of a severe nature. Disturbances like this, you may have heard of the term, are called black swan. It's called a black swan. And they happen rarely, but I'll come to that later because there is an analogy here. Now, these deficits, shortfalls, or deviations in an organization, whenever they happen, are mainly perceived as inefficiencies or repetitive disturbances in the organization. What happens inevitably, they lead to a loss of quality of work, a loss of product quality, service quality whenever you're in a service business. And ultimately, and that's the point, it leads to a financial loss. What generally happens that a system or a company starts putting in internal efforts to correct the above mentioned deficits and by, for example, improving cooperation. But that is not always effective, mainly because the root cause or the root causes are not identified. And if the root causes were easily to be identified, they would be identified by the people working in the company. Now, you may have heard of this term, who is part of the problem cannot be part of the solution. So this partially applies here because some of the root causes that really go very deep into the system cannot be seen by the people working in the system. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens then is that the result would be a so-called dysfunctional social system. Mm-hmm. And such a system can only be penetrated by applying a systemic holistic view. Mm-hmm. And this holistic view takes into account the emotionality and the psychological setting of the people involved. This means also to take a deeper look at defined goals, current problems, and moreover individual resources and personal challenges of of individuals.
Mhm.
And the process of consulting with the systemic approach is always people-centered.
Mhm.
So again, let me summarize. It's people-centered. We look into the emotionality of what's happening there. It's basically we look into how people work together and why this working together is disturbed,
Mhm.
right?
Okay. Right,
Okay.
right, right. So, are you okay with that? That we will take also a few examples which will address Indo-German business. Are you okay with that? Or
Yeah, yes, of course.
okay,
That is the one of the main reasons why I'm talking to you today,
okay, fine.
because I feel that this systemic consulting thing has no effect if we don't apply it in business or industry, and maybe it would be good to see what it actually means when you apply it in industry. And later on, we can also look, once we have understood that, we
Mm-hmm.
can look into why is it so important, I feel, uh, to have it in this Indo-German context,
Yes.
um, because that could be, depending on the situation, um, the key to sustainable success,
Okay. Fine.
if applied correctly and wherever required.
Understood.
Hmm?
So I must admit that the first time I heard about this concept was when I met you last
Okay.
year.
Hmm.
So because I know about a lot about consulting companies,
Hmm.
also consulting processes which are there. Like there is a lot of methodology which is being followed
Yes.
by, I would say, from top five to several consulting companies which are there.
Yeah. Hmm.
uh, come as concerned with Indian businesses, purely Indian companies are not used to consulting in a way we are used to from Germany. So I would come
Yes.
back to that question later on.
Yes, of
Uh,
course.
how you want to see this challenge?
Yes.
That is the first thing. The second thing is that once you talk about consulting and you are saying it's a systemic consulting,
Hmm.
so it is something like system relevant, means what the term is being used in Germany at this point when people want the freedom to move around,
Yeah.
not to get applied for this, I would say, the lockdown. So they are
Yeah.
using this system relevant concept to be able to freely do some things which are not applied to the people who are in lockdown,
Yeah.
say like schools or traveling, etc., etc. So it means that something which has happened as a catastrophe,
Hmm.
which is coronavirus at this point, and the governments are trying to manage this situation or a challenge which is spreading worldwide.
Hmm.
Can systemic consulting be applied to this problem? Is This is a big challenge. So if you say that no, Sanjay, this is not the right, I would say, the right problem to face in terms of corona,
Hmm.
can systemic consulting be applied to such a problem to solve it? Because it is concerned with people. It influences the people. It influences their lives. It is also influencing their quality of life.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, the financial losses are happening not only to the government but also the people. So, is this too much of a global macroeconomic problem where you cannot apply systemic? If yes, then please do go ahead and try to reply to
Hmm.
that in a short term. And the third question
Okay.
will be, I'm sorry,
Hmm.
yes, and third
Yeah.
question would be, in case you say that no, this is not the subject,
Hmm.
then I would request you to compare one Indian example of a German company who has gone to India, and where you would say, without taking any names, of course, if you feel comfortable, that you say that yes, this company, if the system consulting would have been applied to that company, it would have had that kind of a CAGR returns or whatever, success would have increased. So yes, so I have a question which is in three parts. Please
Okay.
be
Good.
comfortable.
Okay. First question, I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. uh, um, what is happening right now? If you look at this COVID crisis, yes, this COVID crisis can be declared as a black swan because it was unexpected. It has severe consequences on bigger and smaller organizations, even on families. And it is very rare that these things happen. Now these events, like what you call them black swan events, 9/11 was such one, financial crisis 2008, 2009. The funny thing is that in hindsight, all of these black swan events uh, could have actually been expected, But so this is also something that characterizes events like this. But you asked in the context of system relevant when we talk about what is system relevant, right? And the systemic consulting actually only looks into organizations. Now what is happening macroeconomically is very, very complex. And it cannot be described mathematically because it's so complex. Actually, you can say when, let us say in a group of 5 people, the modes of interaction, now mathematicians have tried to do some modeling around that. Can you actually describe the mode of interactions between people? Now, they have given up above 5, right? So even 5 cannot be modeled. So it's so complex, actually, the way people communicate, cooperate, work together, which is exactly what is happening macroeconomically. So there are so many organizations, individuals, people, disturbances, random disturbances happening to the system with almost daily changing information and inputs from the scientists on what is happening and what we're learning day by day about this virus and what it's doing to us. So that is so complex and so macroeconomic that this is not where systemic consulting actually takes place. But let me build a bridge. Now, this impact that all of us are experiencing, of course, is partially destabilizing, disturbing into smaller, bigger organizations. And as I said earlier, also families are disturbed by that. Now, when we focus on organizations here, now these disturbances, they of course require changes in an organization, and at times organizations are not able to adapt to these changes because they're just not aware of actually what has actually gone wrong now, right? Now, of course, superficially, things will be taken care of, and companies will be able to manage the situation. But the damage it has done deep down, that may come up at a later point of time. So I'll put it this way: the systemic consultants, that means people like LÜDERS partner, and there are others also, they are generally called to support companies in getting their things back on track after they have gone through a very costly restructuring and reorganizational process. So that means the work of systemic consulting actually starts by working with the people and looking for the reasons why, even after, I must say, a good professional restructuring has taken place, companies find out, hey, we are spending a lot of money in sorting out these inefficiencies, or we have a loss of quality somewhere in our services or product after the restructuring has taken place. And that's something which happens quite frequently after restructuring. And that's what I said earlier. Restructuring can also be somewhat in their effect defined as a black swan. Mm-hmm. And because it has such a deep impact, and although everything seems okay, the cooperation does not happen within the company, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and it is funny, although workflows have been designed, and you know that today's workflows are more or less digitalized, uh, and they require uh, very little human interference.
Yes.
After you restructure within a company, you actually uh, have a lot of disturbances there, um, and, um, and let me bring in this aspect. You know, if everybody works to the rule, probably an organization would not work properly,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes even unions use this term. Okay, we will work to the rule, no? To put pressure on their employers,
Right.
right? And there is some substance in that, because if people start working to the rule, the work actually does not progress as it should. So you
Mhm.
need a lot of other things happening among and within the people, within the system, uh, to make an organization work efficiently, effectively, and and of course at at the main target. Working for the main target of a company is to make money, right?
Right, right. So
Right.
before we go to the third part of the
Yeah.
question, I would like
Yeah.
to know if there is an example of the different industries which you would like to mention, which are where systemic consulting can be best applied,
Yes.
and how much do you have to know the company before consulting it? Because I mean, usually the consulting businesses are, of course, meant for success, so that an
Yes.
organization can grow, it can restructure, it can become more successful, it can have bottom lines which are bulging or growing. So
Yes.
it's basically about success. As I heard from your introduction, it is a holistic approach. That means that
Yes.
you have to know the people inside the organization, as well as you have to know their business. And
Mhm.
usually the consultants have a at least a kind of a negative image attached to them, that they are, they are not themselves involved in the business, but they usually have a lot of advice which has to be implemented by the organization. So in these
Yes.
terms, can you use the advantages of systemic consulting? If maybe you can highlight those in this case.
Yes. Now, you're right. Usually, consulting has a little bit of a negative image. Now, when you go into systemic consulting, um, what we actually do is we look at the people running the show, right? We look at top, middle level, bottom level. So let us assume, and we're just doing this not in an industry. Just a recent example, there is uh, a unit in the healthcare industry, and that unit has is experiencing a very severe image issue uh, outside, which in turn ultimately will lead to a financial loss, right? Because people will not want to come to that healthcare unit. So when we went in there, we found that there is a department that has most of the, let us say, uh, external contacts and impact on the external reputation, right? By what they're doing, like keeping the hospital intact, keeping the elevators intact, which it's a life issue, life and death issue, and so on. So in that hospital, which is a healthcare unit, that that department is a totally dysfunctional system, right? Which we found out, and we found out by talking to um, about 20 people working in that department. We started top, went over the middle level to the, let us say, first leadership level, and we found out that some people are working to the rule. Some people actually do not know why they're working for what is their task, what is expected from them. So what happens as a consequence is everybody does a job, but the entire unit is not working towards a common goal of establishing a proper reputation for this healthcare unit. And this is what we do in industry also. So we find out something is dysfunctional, so we start talking to the people. And while talking to the people, we ask questions which other consultants usually don't ask. And you just mentioned that we need to know their area of business. Now, you're right, we need to know whether they're in industry and healthcare or in any other, or whether they're in aerospace. So we need to know what is important for them, right? So we need to know that line. We do not need to know their processes in detail. We do not need to know the technology in detail. If we do, and some of our consultants are engineers like I am, so if they tell me about let us say, a machining process, I would understand. If they talk to me about a workflow on the shop floor, I would understand. But it is not necessary, because what we look at is, why is this system in industry dysfunctional, right? And when we talk about why is it dysfunctional, what do we look at? We look at the emotionality and the psychological setting of the people working there. Yeah, because something is in disorder there, that this system is dysfunctional. I can tell you, Sanjay, whenever we go into an industry and we see a dysfunctional system, I can tell you the root causes are never of a technical nature. The root causes are never of a nature that company has not put in enough diligence in their commercial processes or in compliance processes, right? We generally find the root cause in the communication and cooperation of the people. That is where it is. And of course, and that is influenced by the emotionality and the psychological setting of the people, right? And that is where I would like to build the bridge to India. Now, if a German company wants to operate in India, wants to operate successfully in India, it is inevitable to have to understand the emotionality and psychological setting of the people there, right? Because it is different. And now, and going ahead, but I'll come back to that later. For Indian companies who want to do business with Germans, the same statement is valid. You need to know, as an Indian, you need to know this emotionality and the psychological setting of the German. And what I call this, and I've created that term. You may have heard it in a different context. The Germans need to know the Indian soul if you want to be successful there in a sustainable way. And Indians should have some clue about the German soul when they want to do business successfully here in Germany. Okay. And that is where our systemic consulting sets in and says, well, what generally Germans do when they go to India is, and I don't blame them, because that's what has been done over the years. And I'm not sure whether you're aware of it. Germany and India have business relations since the 16th century. And there are so many companies, German companies in India, more than 1,800. And although most of them are quite, let us say, financially quite successful, I've actually not met anybody who is really, totally, thoroughly happy with the operations and the activities over there.
Yes.
And nobody speaks about this in the open, which I totally understand. But when you talk to people in a four-eye discussion, you would find, well, they say we have to put in a lot of work. It's difficult with them, and we have to do the checking, so if you, what I'm trying to say is, you need to know the emotionality, the Indian soul, and then suddenly you will find ways of doing things so that you get things done the way you want them to be done. Now, I'll give you an example out of my own history.
Okay.
Maybe that will help you understand. No? I had a situation in a production workshop where we had some pumps, and the pumps had to be disassembled. Now, usually we do assembling in a pump in an assembly line, but due to a defective part which we got, these pumps had to be disassembled. So we disassembled. So the disassembly was supposed to be done on this assembly line. And then, okay, I told my people, please get it disassembled in the assembly line, because we have tools, everything there. So then the foreman came back to me and he said, sir, the people are refusing to disassemble the pump. Now imagine this happening in Germany. What would happen? You would say, hey, you're refusing to work, yeah? So this will have severe consequences, and you go into let us say, more of a HR issue with these people, right? Now in India, you can solve it in a very different way if you know what actually motivates people. So what I did is, I went down to the assembly line and I asked the person, why are you not disassembling this pump? And the person said, sir, we are pump assembly, not pump disassembly. Okay. So I said, okay, it's no problem. I'll give it to the second shift. Actually, they are a little better than you are in disassembling pumps. Sanjay, you would not believe, it took him 5 seconds to think. And he said, sir, you don't worry, we will do it to your satisfaction. And he did it, right? So one needs to understand what motivates the person. Now, he was motivated to assemble pumps. And by creating this system of competition, right, with the other shift, yeah, he suddenly saw his motivation was to do much better than the second shift, right? And that is something that is there in the emotionality and the psychological setting of the people. Yeah, they are far more competitive, whereas in Germany you would not find it to that extent. And what I'm trying to say is, if you use that, you can find ways of doing things which are unimaginable here. And if you allow me, I'll just give you another example of a colleague of mine, a German company, now which happened recently in the pandemic issue. Now this company is in the food business, and lockdown came upon India, like all over the world, and all the people, the salespeople, but as well as the headquarter people, had to stay at home for a couple of weeks, right? So he saw, my friend, he saw his business going down the drain, right? Because nobody was out there to sell, right? So what he did, he said, he asked all of his people, not only the salespeople, all of the employees who were at home, whenever you go to the shop to buy your groceries for your daily living, you please take a writing pad with you and you ask your shopkeeper which products he needs from our company. And you can guarantee him he will be delivered within 48 hours. And imagine it worked so well, and they internally, all the people competed with each other to have the maximum number of orders. And please note, they are not salespeople, right? So imagine somebody doing something which is not a job and trying to bring in business for their company in these situations. I feel that this would have been unimaginable in Germany, right?
Absolutely.
Now he has understood that, and this is what makes a difference. Yes,
there is
but you have to go in very deep really to understand that. And if I may add here, some companies, and that is one of the reasons why the majority of the German companies is not really thoroughly happy with their businesses in India. They go for an intercultural training, which is absolutely necessary, and you get all the basics. But in my opinion, that is not enough. You need to go a step deeper into what happens in the people's minds and in their soul.
Yes.
Okay.
I have in Germany there is a saying, "Der Fisch stinkt vom Kopf."
Yeah.
I haven't heard this here because
Yeah.
very Indian companies and family-owned businesses are very hierarchical.
Yes.
So usually the Kopf means the boss of the company doesn't want to listen to this sentence.
Yes.
Is it something similar in Germany? And can this problem be at least communicated to the boss, so that I mean through systemic consulting, so that he understands how he can be helped in case there is a problem in the company? Because I see a lot of companies in India, at least, who are run family-owned businesses who are run that way. They may be successful on different levels, but I also see many cases where there are problems, and there's no one to tell them that there is a problem, because every employee in that company will be good to their bosses or whatever. So that levels don't communicate this. And if there is a systemic problem now in the organization which is bringing them competitively down as well as financially, then it needs to be addressed, right? We have a few questions coming up, but don't want to stop you. You can go ahead and
yes, I'll answer these questions, and maybe then we can go to the questions coming up, right?
Okay.
Now, basically, you can say if a person does not, you can only consult the person in the on the systemic level if he wants it, right? So if he is totally against a consulting activity like this, you will not get this message to him, right? So that I can say. But if a person is, let us say, as you right say, this hierarchy levels, the boss at the top, the head of the family at the top, if he is open for it, I can guarantee you that all systemic consultants are good, and we especially are known for that. LÜDERS partner, if you look into the market, is known for that we talk to the people and we give a feedback to the bosses, right? Now I can tell you recently there was a case when a boss of a trade company called us and asked for help, and he said, well, I have a few directors sitting here, all 8 of them. Actually, I should kick out all 8 of them, right? So he said, please help me. Now we went there and we talked to him, and we talked to the 8 directors. Well, we went back to him and had to tell him, well, you really have a problem. And he says, yes, see, I told you. And we said, well, the problem is sitting opposite to us, right? So that's where it starts. So I think that's what you mean. Yes, if it is not, it's just a little bit of work. Usually we do find out if there is an issue that begins at the top. And if the top person is willing to listen, yes, then the issues of this dysfunctional system can be solved, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yes, and also for these Indian companies with this strong hierarchical, let us say, context, it is possible if the top person is willing to listen to what the systemic consultant has to tell him. Yes,
Okay.
because he will find out, he or she, um, um, they will find out what is happening in your system,
True.
right?
True.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily, golf is picking up heavily in India. A lot of the top people are playing golf. So,
Yes.
Anton, you have also to start playing golf so that you can give that message right away by by playing golf.
Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I play golf and I do give these messages. Incidentally, yes.
Because as a consultant, I cannot imagine myself sitting in front of the boss and telling him you are the problem. So
Yeah.
in the first meeting, at least, even if I knew
Yes.
that it is. So
Okay, it was the second meeting. Yes.
okay, fine. So let's take the questions because
Yes,
we have
please.
hardly some time left.
Yes.
So I have one question here which says that how important, in your perspective, the cultural know-how is important for cross-country businesses, for example, between India and Germany. I think you already replied to that. You already said that intercultural communication is very important, but it's not enough. The
Yes.
second one, I think from Latha, it is if communication is an issue, does that mean that company hierarchical structure in brackets horizontal or vertical also can be a contributing factor? So this is an important question. So that means it's not only the boss, the whole hierarchical structure is kind of to be addressed.
Yes, I can only give you a clear yes to that. Um, Sometimes it is not clear where the issues come from. So it could come vertical, and I would like to remove misunderstanding. It is not always in the vertical. Uh, Many things also are in the horizontal. And especially when you look after restructuring has taken place. Yeah? Let us say you have just shifted a few departments from one area to another, or you have merged departments. What generally happens is that people are very insecure of what their role is in future in this new organization, right? They would not speak out because sometimes, or mostly, when reorganization happens, they cut headcount, right? That's the main reason to do a reorganization, to become more efficient. But what happens as a consequence, almost always, is that people go into a bit of a hiding. That means they don't work to that level of potential that they actually have. And uh, and yes, and this is in horizontals as well as in vertical. So you have to look at the entire picture. Yeah? I hope I've answered the question to whoever asked it.
I guess so. Otherwise, please feel free to communicate here.
Yes.
Um, yes, so we actually don't have any different questions as already you have addressed.
Yes.
Uh, I mean, thank you for giving us this insight on the details of the systemic consulting. Would you like to mention any other example as in between? I mean, typical business between India and Germany. For
Yes. I have mentioned a few examples of German companies in India.
right.
Uh, now I also have an example vice versa. So uh, just to see how little things actually can cause severe damage to a company. Um, Now there was this company that I know of, where the the Indians have bought a German company a couple of years back, and they were actually slowly declining. That means their financial results were declining, and they had to reduce headcount, and whatever happened. So when we went in, we found out that uh, a lot of things were actually going wrong. And what we found out is that I'll give you just one example, maybe because time is running out.
Yes.
We've found out that the telephone bill
Mm-hmm.
and let us say data communication bill
Mm.
was paid from India.
Oh,
Now,
okay. Mm-hmm.
now, and sometimes it was not paid. So that means the telecom, because forgotten or whatever happened, something went wrong, and telecom just cut off the data connection
Mm-hmm.
because the bills were not paid. And this
Right.
happened repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is because the Indian owner said, I want to have the control over every euro that is spent.
I see.
That's why we will spend money there. Now, that means they have not understood the German soul.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot work in a German environment like this.
Right.
In India, you can always do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've lived and worked in India for more than 20, 25 years. And in India, there is always a solution because you always find somebody who would be very helpful. In Germany, you also will find these people, but they work more to a given workflow. That
Mm.
means it is, and and once you're disconnected in Germany, uh, the competition is so big here in Germany
Right.
that people will go to a different unit to get
Right.
whatever they want. No?
Mm.
So, uh, so the understanding of the German soul was not there from the Indian company. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is a very simple example, but I think it illustrates actually what is meant. And unfortunately, we could not do much for them
Yeah.
because the willingness to listen was not there.
Was not there.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
So, Anton, I have. I'm sorry that we are running out of time, but
Yes.
I'm sure that there'll be more responses coming afterwards from the recorded session, which we will post on YouTube in a couple of days' time, as soon
Okay.
as we have a few slides from you, which
Okay.
will help this presentation. I have a one last question.
Yes.
Before we close it. Uh, is there anything which you can say about your experience in India? Are Indians basically born for systemic consulting, or they can adapt much faster? Or can Germans adapt much faster to systemic consulting so that they can take their help? Because you have to also listen to this, otherwise,
Yeah.
you cannot be helped, you said. And
Yes.
so that is one last question. If you can answer very
Yes.
shortly, it will be fantastic. Yes.
Well, in my experience, I think uh, the opinion about systemic consulting would be the same in Germany as in India. Um, uh, because organizations, um, uh, if they have not been confronted or have not dealt with it uh, previously, they're very skeptical about its help. From our experience, I can tell you, once they have seen the advantages, that means it is effective, it is sustainable, and it addresses the real root causes that you have. And it just not tinkers with the system, with the symptoms, sorry, in the system, but it addresses the root causes and the real ones, right? And so once you have a success with this approach, uh, our customers keep coming back to us uh, uh, again and again and again. Uh, in India, I think it would be fairly new, but I have seen and I have spoken to owners of smaller and bigger units who are quite open to topics like this and who would be willing to listen to what we have to tell them.
Okay,
Right?
fantastic. Great. Thanks,
Yes.
Anton. I would like to say thank you for taking your time again. Thank you to you personally
Thank you
to
for the
have this time with
opportunity.
us. Probably we'll speak again in maybe 6 months' time where you'll have more
Yes,
examples of this.
correct.
And also thank you to Leaders Partner who gave us the opportunity to invite you here, as
Thank
well
you.
as FICCI, who's always been supporting us ever since we started this chapter
Yes.
2 years back, and Longhouse Consulting, who is based out of Munich as well as Delhi, and who is also into HR as well as market entry strategies. So thanks to all these organizations as well as the supporting Consulate, who also has been motivating us to always do such events and webinar series in difficult Zoom times. And of course, many thanks to the spectators who joined us today. Please give us your feedback on LinkedIn or if-germany.com. On LinkedIn, you'll find us on IEF Germany. So please feel free to give us any feedback. We want to invite more and more speakers. We'll have a few people who are leaders in their own respect in different industries as well as businesses, and specifically from the startup as well as the Indo-German sector. So hope to see you back again when we have the Inder Talk episode 4. And yes, thank you. Keep healthy and remain safe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Anton. Bye.